So today on the Smoking Wraith, I wanted to clarify what I mean by D&D, and that is because I do not play core D&D, but rather I play this homebrewed style of D&D that me and my cousin kind of created as we aged up throughout the years. It's a lot of roleplay that's heavily focused on the personalities and capabilities of the character within the world as it is. And it's a more gothic role play with a lot of physics based. So at times, logic comes into question, and the narrator or the DM, whichever you choose to call it, will be called into question by a player or a character, and they will have a debate, preferably short, and we'll come to a conclusion that we agree to be fair on both sides, like the sides being the perception of the character's capabilities as well as the world's influences on that character's capabilities in that area or in circumstance. So typically in the world, the physics are of course bent because it's a fantasy world, but I try to incorporate as much real-life economic influences and the physics on armor and smithing capabilities while bending it to the reality that is my world. So where, you know how in J.R. Tolkien's world, he has the Dunedain ancestors with higher forging capabilities, closer to that of the elves and stuff. So each of my different cultures, even if they're all from the same ethnicity or genetic coding, could have these different changes in the way they forge or their architecture, their faith. Even if it's technically they're worshiping the same god, they could have a change in faith. Just overall, the world and the way it functions is quite a bit different than the core D&D worlds and the code of rules. I like to use some examples. How, like, in core D&D you have AC, which is your armor count or something like that. Sorry, it's been a while since I played core D&D, so excuse if I use the wrong words. But your AC, when, like, a knight, he's fighting an ogre, and he gets hit, and the ogre gets a bonus because of its size bonus versus the knight, unless the knight has a certain feat. But my point in my world is that when the knight's hit by the ogre, they roll damage, and if that ogre don't match the knight's AC, his armor, which is just mild steel when you get more specific, in core D&D, the ogre doesn't get past the armor and he stops on the outside of this mild steel for no apparent reason to me. Whereas in the narration style, due to the base of physics, if this mild steel guy rolls, because AC is less of a stat and more of like, your armor is this, and I'll tell you how strong that armor is and what it's good against. And we can talk that, and you can always ask the narrator more details about what you have on you, and I can always inform you to what your character would know, or just a little bit more to improve your narrating capabilities. So, like, I often use the phrase, like, a giant's fist. So, like, if a giant's fist comes down and it doesn't pass your AC, then you survive perfectly fine. But in my world, you can have hardened steel, which is incredibly strong, like resistant pickaxes going through it and crap like that. So you can have a hardened steel knight fight a giant, and when that giant punches him, he's gone. Like, there's no way to endure that, even if the armor survives the devastation of this massive fist crushing his puny body. The internal damage within that person is going to be so extreme. But then the way that my stats function is I have a long list. It's closer to how Dark Souls may function, how you have that. And then it functions like your 10 in your stats, whatever it is, say it's strength or dex or endurance or whatever. A 10 is the average for your race. So an orc in my world is going to be stronger at a 10 than a human. That's just what it is. It's how this world functions. That's what this narration is. It makes you have to roleplay knowing that you are just the average strength of your species. And it still functions with the way that my ranking goes. But that number continues on. Like on and on and on and on. And it's a little bit rough for me. I'm still working out the specifics on all the powerful characters in my world, what their stats could possibly be. Because I mean, it goes up really high, like Dark Souls. You're over there with like 150 strength. Even as a human, you're going to be able to perform inhuman acts and feats of strength. However, you probably got there by not focusing on all of your stats or by a magical way. And, you have to find your path there. You will not be able to just level up and put points into strength every time, but rather you'd, in the narrative world where it's heavily in role-playing, you have to specify, like, I want to train in this, find a trainer and train this, learn this skill, read books for a set amount of time, and you have to find a way to manage yourself through that, kind of like a survival situation. If you're in a town, you have to find an inn, book passage in that, stay in that inn for the time period you want to train for. Then you have to pay for food. Then you have to tell your narrator how you're going to spend your time. And the way this functions with a party is you may have one high level player that is going to investigate in this town, and you have a lower level character that is tagging along with this character. Say he is a mage. When the bounty hunter character, he's going around the village and he's investigating, he's asking questions, he's getting into fights with gangs. You have the lower level character spending these days, hours, whatever it is, learning in the library or apprenticing underneath the neighborhood mage. And that time can pass by smoothly or relatively fast, depending on how fast the other character's doing. But you can have small, interesting dialogue, and a character can meet very elaborate NPCs that have an effect on the story just by going to have training. Like, say, you get trained in Stormhall, and you travel for 2 years around the world, and you come back to Stormhall, and you find the trainer there again, but you're a much higher level character. And he employs you to do his training for him because he knows that you are a skilled combatant. Thus, that is a relationship that you can come back to. And that's like some of the base grounds of what I strive to achieve in my narrative world. But I do phrase it as playing D&D because it's a role-playing game, a tabletop game that I don't really have a name for. It's very interactive. We like to use voices, sound effects, play with music, and we stand up and we act out the way the attacks are, because that has an extreme effect on physics. Like, we cannot assume, like, in core D&D, if you have this stat and these skills, then when you say I attack or called shot or you just do an attack, they automatically see your skilled character performing whatever action you wish to perform and achieving it based on the die. But in our world, you have to be in a correct position in order to make that swing. Then you say what the swing is, and depending on the armor, position, and defense qualities and skills of the opponent is depending on if it is able to defend or it gets hit or if the weapon slides off its armor or punctures through the armor, vice versa. This allows for just consistent role playing in the pressure. Also, we do use die. It depends on times what if we're wanting to use die or not. That's kind of a flux. But rather, at times we use this number thing, and it keeps up the pressure, especially in like a horror scene, or you're being chased, or in the middle of a battlefield, which is intense in the narrative world when you don't have all this rolling in. Let me know this and that, but instead you get told the armor in front of you, you have to react, boom. And what we do, instead of saying roll 220 die, is we say 1 through 100, and then you're going to guess 20, and because it was 30, you're close, so you get an okay reaction. But say you said 80 and it was 20, then you get a negative reaction. If you said 100 and it's 10, then you're probably going to get really badly damaged. So in the narrative world, position is life. So my videos are fixing to end, I'm almost out of time, but position is life, meaning that if you get stabbed in the heart and you are falling down, you have a chance to survive if you're falling down backwards, but if you're falling down forward, you're dead. And that's all the time I have. Thank you. Goodbye. I'll see you next time.